short video tonight about doing color E6 developing at home. I know a lot of people are scared to do it. I know I was for years, and it's really pretty simple, and I've been getting great results using the Tetnol ColorTech E6 kit. I bought the 2.5 liter kit. Mix it up 600 milliliters at a time because my Patterson tank for 235 films needs right at 600 milliliters. And since I know I'll be doing that some, I mixed my batches up as 600 milliliters. And I got 4 of these glass bottles. And the directions will tell you the ratios to mix up 600 milliliters of each thing. There's a first developer, there's a color developer, there's a Blix, and then there's a stabilizer. The tricky thing is the temperature, which everybody is scared about, and it's really not that hard to do. I use my kitchen sink. I've got a pretty large single bowl sink that holds a lot of water, and I bring it up to 110 degrees. And by doing that, it gives it time to warm up all the chemicals as the temperature slowly comes down to the 100-degree mark that we need for developing. And by that time, I found all the chemicals have come up to 100 degrees as the temperature in the bath comes down to 100 degrees. If we have to, we can add in a little hot water as we go along, but normally I don't even have to do that. The developing time is fairly short. It's like 6.5 minutes, and so the first developer is really the only one that's super critical. You have to keep it within a half a degree. So I usually start right before it hits 100, and by the time the 6.5 minutes, I'm still within the half a degree one way or another that you're supposed to be for the first bath. Between the baths, you're supposed to wash for 2.5 minutes, which I do in a sink downstairs that has a hose connected to it, and then I come back and do the next bath. Again, don't be afraid of this. It's a pretty simple process, and I'll try to video as I go through and show you how simple this really is. So we're letting the stuff come up to temperature, and I'll come back once the temperature is stabilized. Okay, the water's getting close to the right temperature. It's about 102 degrees. So first I'm going to go ahead and put my nitrile gloves on. This chemistry you probably don't want to be sticking your hands in. I don't think it's like super crazy, caustic where it's going to burn your skin, but again, you probably don't want to be getting it all over you. One of the first things we want to do is you want to pre-soak the film, and our instructions tell us to do it at the temperature for 5 minutes. So you can go ahead and just use some of the water that's in your sink and fill up your development tank, seal it up, and I usually kind of burp it a little bit like you do Tupperware so that the lid seals nice and tight, and then just put the drum in the water. We'll be using the water bath with the drum as we're developing to keep the drum and everything at the right temperature. Some people say you need to use stainless steel. I've been using these plastic drums and I haven't had any problem. One thing I am careful with though is they warn you not to cross-contaminate the first and the second developer, and so I have separate funnels and beakers for the color developer and the first developer, so I make sure they're nowhere near each other. Because we don't want to end up with ruining our chemistry before we've gone through the amount that it can deal with. The other thing is I'm just using one of these kind of dial thermometers. This is a Premier. It wasn't a super cheap one, but it wasn't a crazy expensive one either. I think it's about a $20 thermometer. I think this is probably as accurate as you need to be. The main thing you want to be is consistent with how you develop. And if you get good results, like with your first batch using the thermometer and the technique you're using, then you can repeat it so that you can get the same results each time. As this is soaking, I can also talk about as the developers get exhausted, you have to increase the amount of time that you have it in each bath. And that's in the instructions as well. Like for 1 to 2 films, you do 6 minutes and 15 seconds. And then the 3 to 4 films, you do 6 minutes and 30 seconds. And then the 5 to 6 films, you do 6 minutes and 45 seconds. I've read people doing 2 more films and doing them at 7 minutes and just extrapolate out the time. And I think you can still get good results and get the maximum amount of films out of the chemistry because it's not cheap. Also, you don't dump this out. It's not like black and white where it's one shot. You reuse the chemistry on multiple rolls of film, and again, just extend the time that you have them in each bath as the chemistry gets exhausted. Well, we're going to let this warm up for a minute. Oh, and here's the other little thing I use. I use just a little kitchen timer, and I should have started this when I started soaking that, but the soak time isn't super critical. 5-6 minutes. You just want to get the film good and soaked and get the emulsion swollen so that when you start doing the other baths, there's no spots and you don't have to worry about air bubbles and stuff. Anyway, we'll let this film warm up. We'll let the temperature come to the perfect temperature. Then we'll start developing our film. Okay, the film's been soaking now for 5 minutes, and I've got my thermometer in the first developer bottle, and it's just over 100 degrees, so we're ready to go. We pull the tank out because it's nice and warmed up. We stop the timer, reset it. We know we're going to go 6.5 minutes on this first bath. Shake this around a little bit when it's about halfway done so we get all this purple stuff out. And we are ready to go. Take the thermometer out. Pour the developer in. And start the timer. Even when I'm doing 120 film, I go ahead and pour the whole 600 milliliters in. Then, for the first 15 seconds or so, agitate the film. I use this rolling inversion method. I've learned it helps keep it from streaking, especially on like 120 film. And once we get some good agitation in, we put it back in the water bath. Now this is at 100 degrees, and so we know we are going to keep the bath at that temperature through the development cycle. Again, this is such a large quantity of water, I don't think we're really going to have any problem maintaining that temperature. Then, every 30 seconds, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, and back in the water. And we just follow that procedure for 6.5 minutes. I try to keep an eye on the water to make sure that we are staying really close to 100 degrees. And if I start seeing it go down even just a little bit, I can add a little more hot water, but it's still right there. I think we're going to be fine. And we're ready for another agitation cycle. again, this first developer is the one that's really critical. You can change the first development time if you want to push or pull the film. The first developer is when you do it. And it's the opposite of what you would think, because we're going to reverse the film when we do the color developer. Because right now it's developing it just like it would a negative, but the color developers what reverses it and makes it a positive slide film. Some people use the little swizzle stick thing. Some people, got different ways of inversion depending on the tanks you have. You've probably learned from doing black and white film what works good for you. So just do that, and like I said, if you get good results the first time, then you can just keep doing that in the future, and you're going to get consistent results. So here we go with another inversion. And like I said, with my setup, since I just have a single bowl sink, I use a sink downstairs for doing the rinse cycles, but if you've got a double bowl sink, you might be able to put a hose in it and be able to do your rinsing in the same sink that you're doing your developing. And again, I just keep an eye on the temperature. And I may need to put a little hot water in when I get to the blick side, but we're still, that's still 100 degrees, right on the nose. Now what stops the development is putting in the rinse. And so I'm going to go ahead and use this tap to fill this up to stop the development, and then I'm going to go downstairs and rinse it. So we're at 6 minutes. We do one last inversion, and then we start getting a little water running. We want to try to have it as close to 100 degrees as we can get it. But the key here is the timing, and there's our time. We're up. So I pour it back in the bottle. And fill it up with water. And we just did our first development. So I'm going to go downstairs and rinse this for a few minutes. And I'll be back when we're fixing to do our next bath. Okay, so we have our first wash done, and so we're ready for the next bath, which is the color developer. Now, the color developer isn't nearly as critical about the temperature. They say it's plus or minus 1 degree instead of a half a degree. So I checked the temperature of the bath before we came up, turned the video back on, and it was definitely still right there at 100 degrees. So my water is holding its temperature really well. And we follow the same thing. We start the timer. And do our inversions. And put it back in the bath. I just haven't seen that it's that super critical. I mean, I think that's what people are really scared of this process, is they see these super exacting times and the temperature's got to be, within 1 degree. And yes, it's important to get the temperature, keep the temperature as close as you can, so that you can keep things consistent. But just keep an eye on it and make sure that it's within, like this. If it comes down to even, when you start seeing it getting close to 99 degrees, Go ahead and pour a little more hot water in your sink. Because you don't want the temperature to get too far off. The next bath isn't critical at all. It says 97 degrees plus or minus 5 degrees. So once you get past these first 2 baths, the temperature really isn't going to be an issue. The sink will be easily within that range by the time you get to the Blix, and then the stabilizer, it doesn't matter at all. It actually, it can be done at room temperature. I guess I've been used to keeping it at the same temperature as the other chemistry. I'm not a big fan of temperature shocking film. I've seen it reticulate, at least black and white film, when I've shocked the temperature. And so I go ahead and do the stabilizer at the same temperature I've been doing the rest of the chemistry. And I usually, once I get to this point, I start breathing easy because we're like halfway through the color developer. Our temperature's staying right where it needs to be. The other thing is I try to keep the tank in the center of the sink because it's probably a little colder toward the edges. And we should be fine. It's still right on 100 degrees, so I don't have to worry about any more temperature drift through the processes I've got left to do. Now I do keep the funnel in the first developer on that side of the sink, and then this funnel and the color developer on the other side of the sink, just so there's no chance that we have any kind of cross-contamination between the two. The thing I like about doing E6 at home instead of sending it off, it used to be a really common process, and I could take it to a lab in town and they'd have overnight E6 processing where I'd go pick it up the next day. Well, now that film isn't as popular as it used to be, there's all the E6 labs have shut down, or most of them have, and they don't do overnight processing anymore, and you have to mail them off somewhere and then wait for a week or two to see what you've got. And like, I shot this film today and I want to see what it looks like, and I don't want to have to wait a week to see the results of my what I shot today. And again, I will dump some water in here to stop the color developing, and then I'll go downstairs and rinse it. When you're rinsing, don't skimp. Use a lot of water, shake it, dump it out. I've got a little hose that fits down in the middle, so it fills it from the bottom up and kind of forces the water out. But I still shake it and dump it out, and I probably do 10 or 15 water changes to make sure I get the film good and rinsed between the baths, because you don't want to contaminate the next chemical. Because again, this isn't one-shot chemistry. We're reusing this chemistry multiple times, and you want to get as many rolls of film as you can out of the kit that you buy, because these kits are almost $100. And putting the water in there stops the developer. And so now we'll go rinse this out and come back and do the Blix. We're getting close to the end. Okay, back from rinsing the color developer out, and we're fixing to do what's, I think, the nastiest of the chemicals, the Blix. You may have noticed I forgot to put my gloves back on for the color developer, which was, I shouldn't have done, but the Blix is really the nasty stuff. We're doing it also for 7 minutes. And again, like I said, the Blix temperature isn't nearly as critical. And I don't even think the timing is super critical. You just want to make sure you do the bleach fix thing long enough. And this is definitely some strong smelling stuff. And I would not want to get this on me. And so, start the timer. I'm going to rinse this little cap off really good before I put it back and seal up my color developer. First developer, put the lid on. And this, I think you can do a little stronger agitation on it to make sure that you get it fixed really well. Because if you don't bleach it and fix it good, it's not going to look right. I am really excited to see what this looks like. I just got a 6x12 Horseman back for my Graflex Super Graphic. And this will be the first time I've seen Panorama 120 film that I've shot, and so I'm excited to see what this looks like. I shot it with an old Kodak 135 wide field Ektar, which in the past has done really well on 4x5, and so I'm expecting really spectacular results from this. I like shooting roll film. It's a lot less of a hassle than sheet film is, and I'm hoping that this turns out really well. It'll be a nice way to use my large format camera without having to deal with sheet film. I do have a new kind of developing tank for 4x5 sheets that I haven't tried yet, and I don't know if you've ever seen a 4x5 slide. They're beautiful. I mean, it's one of the coolest things that I've seen in photography. I think the thing I enjoy most about film is slide film and the way the black and white and the darkroom looks. I do shoot a lot of digital too. I do event photography and semi-professionally, and obviously for event photography, digital is by far the way to go. I use a D4 and a 24-120 f4 Nikkor and get really fantastic results out of that combo. And I can deliver the results the same day or the next day at the latest. If I have to do very little post-processing, usually all I end up doing is just doing a little cropping from the out-of-camera images, which I know a lot of people like shooting raw, and I just haven't found the need most of the time. I do usually shoot JPEG plus RAW, but I find that 99% of the time the JPEGs look great. But anyway, got a little sidetracked there. I do like shooting film. The whole process of it is just fun. And even this, while I used to be really scared of it, it's part of the enjoyment I get out of shooting film is just the whole chemistry, analog part of it. There's still kind of a mystery to me with shooting film that you really don't get with a digital camera. I think there is a place for film, and I sure hope that the manufacturers continue to make it, and people like Technol keep making these home development kits. I've also used their kit to do some C41 processing, and I actually found that processing it at, I think it's 80 degrees instead of 100, where you extend the development time, worked really well. And obviously it's even easier to maintain the temperature in this exact same using a kitchen sink water bath to do my C41 development, and it's just as easy, and the results turned out wonderful. And so don't be afraid of trying to do some C41 developing at home too. There's really no need to send any of this out anymore. So I've been talking away here. We got about another minute for this. I know, like, you're probably anxious to see what this is going to look like as I am. But we've got another wash, and then we've got 1 minute in the stabilizer. Actually, it's a 4-minute wash after this Blex. I guess it's like kind of extra nasty. And then the stabilizer, and I rinse it a little after the stabilizer, and then use a quick photo flow, the soapy water kind of bath. I use water out of my dehumidifier to mix that up with, so that I don't have water spotting. But we're right at the end of this bath, so we're going to dump this nasty stuff back in here. And I'm going to fill up the tank out of the water in the sink because we're at the end of needing it. If a little bit of this splashes into that water, it's no big deal. I'll be draining the sink here shortly. And I'm going to go back downstairs, rinse this off, and we'll come back for the final little bit of this process, and you'll get to see what these slides look like. I'll be right back. Okay, we got the final rinse done, so all we've got left to do is the stabilizer. And it only has to go in for a minute, so we're going to reset the clock here and pour in our stabilizer. Now the instructions don't say this, but I rinse the stabilizer for a real short time after it, and then use the Kodak Photo Flow, or you can use whatever film wash that you're used to using with your black and white chemistry. I just feel that that's really good at keeping water spots off. Again, I use the water out of my dehumidifier to mix up my final rinse to make sure that I don't have any water spotting. And the temperature on the stabilizer can be room temperature, doesn't matter. The instructions just say you can use it at room temp. I try not to shock the film too much, but this part doesn't seem to be very critical at all. It just kind of, I guess, it stabilizes the film. So that goes in for a minute, and that's it for the stabilizer. And again, just a real short rinse with some water. Shake it around a little bit. And maybe one more time. And then we pour in Photo Flow. And it only needs to stay in there for just long enough to wet the film. And then after we dump this out, we'll see the results we got from our film tonight. And then for the part that's the most fun, seeing what the final stuff looks like. And we pull the film out. Don't be too worried if the blacks look a little blue. When you first pull them out, they as the film dries, that will go away, so don't be alarmed. And I'm not sure if you can even see this. Let me turn this light. But they really turned out great. I'm sure once they dry and I get them on a light box, I can see what I've really got here. But anyway, I hope you'll give E6 developing a try at home. It's really not hard, and I think you'll discover that you can get great results with one of these home kits without having to send your film off to a lab. Hope you enjoyed my video, and get a like on my page. Thanks!